Okay. Thank you, Sam. Uh, I should say good morning to my listeners mostly because I can see most of you have joined from outside India. But yes, I know there are some familiar faces of mine from India as well. So good afternoon to you guys and good morning to my listeners from outside. I should first thank Sam, for giving me this opportunity to share my readings of what I find to be a very interesting genre or subgenre. I'm not so sure about. Let's see if we can arrive at an answer about that towards the end. But definitely, it's a trend that is catching up, and I believe this has some interesting things to say apart from entertaining people. Now, the first thing that I should make clear about, I'll be coming back to this in due course, is that I'm going to talk about Bollywood horror comedies, not Indian horror comedies. I mean, it's a bit tricky, you know. I mean, they are definitely films made in India, but there is a very important point to note that we should not be using Indian films and Bollywood films interchangeably, because if we do that, we are leaving out a lot of regional other regional commercial variants of Indian films. And well, I tried to think about it, that is it justified to leave out all those wonderful regional variants like the South Indian film industry, which during the post-pandemic time, it has become the talk of the town everywhere. I mean, people are saying that it's gradually going to replace the hegemony, if we may call it so, of the Bollywood films. But in any case, I ultimately felt that zeroing in would fit the format of this talk. So if I'm leaving out a lot of Indian films, a lot of Indian interesting horror comedies, it's because I have decided to focus on Bollywood. And I have also zeroed in a little bit further by mentioning post-millennial, because as you will get to know during the course of my presentation, the pre-millennial scenario for in Bollywood horror comedy, well, let's say it's not as interesting as the post-millennial one, and I will try my best to justify why I am focusing on the post-millennial trend. But I will not try to bore you further and jump right into the presentation. I will be sharing a PPT and playing some clips. Uh, the language of the clips would be in Hindi. So you have to bear with me for that. I would love to take questions on the language, on the dialogues, on the scenes. But I believe that playing these clips, despite them being in a foreign language, would be helpful for the listeners to at least get the tone of the films. So now I go into the presentation. I will be sharing my screen, and I would request Sam to assist me by just letting me know when it is visible. Okay, and yeah,
Yet.
now it's not full screen, right?
No, it's visible but not full screen.
Yeah, I'll go to the full screen. Okay. Yeah, still not full screen, I guess. Yeah. How about now?
Yes.
Yeah. So, well, I have shown 3 posters in the first slide, but I will be talking about a bit more than 3. So bear with me. Let's get to the basics first, the roadmap. Well, first we will try to have a typological analysis of the term Bollywood horror comedy. And then we will try to identify why the post-millennial turn really matters, and what does it turn from, and where does it turn towards. And well, as I said, I will be doing a little bit more than 3 films. We will talk about 7, or at least try to talk about 7 Bollywood films, not in their entirety, of course. Well, first, let's try to unpack the term Bollywood a bit. I mean, if I say that what I'm going to say on what I'm going to talk about when I'm trying to define Bollywood, this would be blasphemy if I say that this is exhaustive. But I have tried to draw upon one interesting research by Ashish Rajadhaksha, which I believe will help to drive home my points better. Now, my first thing that I mentioned a while back is that I would request, especially my friends from outside India, to not, to not equate Indian films essentially with Bollywood, because you see, if we are going to define the very word Indian, it's a bit challenging, because if you have idea about the cultural diversity, the language diversity, the diversity based on religion, etc., anything, everything, cultural diversity in general, all across India, we have very different ambiances at all 4. Even if we are to speak like one major country from north, one from south, one from east, one from the west, they will look very different, very significantly different. So it's a little tricky to define Indian. And well, even if the cultural critics, the historians, the academics, so to speak, if they are finding it difficult to define Indian, imagine how difficult it would be for commercial filmmakers. I mean, they have to somehow come up with something that has an appeal for all the 4 different major parts at least, so that it ensures that they have a significant amount of business. And so how do they do that? Well, as Rajadhaksha has tried to put forward this idea that it is identical to Hindi cinema. Well, Hindi cinema is actually the dominant mode of popular films still, despite, as I said, the talk being that South Indian films, the popular South Indian films, are gradually taking over. Hindi films have a large audience base indeed. And well, in India right now, it's a very hot topic to discuss whether Hindi should be recognized as a sort of pan-India language at all. I mean, we have this debate going on, like whether we should embrace English as a pan-India language or Hindi as a pan-India language. And if the people from the north and the people from the south have significant differences of opinion on this. But well, when it comes to commercial films, still the stars who are based in areas where Hindi-speaking people live mostly, they are dominating the popular Indian film industry. And I will be mentioning the details of Rajadhaksha's essays towards the end of my presentation. Well, Rajadhaksha did this interesting essay for a book that is entitled Global Bollywood. And it tries to put forward this idea that, well, Bollywood is Bollywood these days in the post-millennial era, mostly because Bollywood is trying to reach out beyond India to the NRIs, the non-residential Indians, the people from all over the world. And that is the reason Bollywood has a certain texture, has a certain cultural politics. And well, if I try to unpack this in further detail, that should be a separate lecture altogether. Let me just try to pin a few points here. That is, well, Bollywood has to do this pan-India representation to the people outside and the people from inside by relying on a number of stereotypes. Well, to give a few examples, like people from my own community, I belong to the Bengali community or Bangali community. If you see the portrayal of the Bengalis, we majorly come from the eastern part of the India. You will see that we are always shown to be fond of Rasgulla, a particular sweetmeat dish. It's very popular. We are always fond of fishes. We are called the aquarium people, and we are almost inadvertently called Babu Moshai. So these are the stereotypes allotted for the Bengalis. There are stereotypes for Punjabis. There are stereotypes for the Gujaratis. There are stereotypes from people from Uttar Pradesh, South people. So these stereotypes help to establish these identities, but as stereotypes always do, they leave out a lot of things. They homogenize. And you know what actually makes how these films actually make up by using these stereotypes relentlessly and still catering to a large base of audience is by using the star figure, the superstar. I mean, you pick almost any popular Bollywood film, there will be a superstar leading the scene. I mean, of course, there are some cases where one is not born a superstar, but rather made a superstar by nepotism. But I'm not getting into that. And apart from that, there is the very famous song and dance sequence. I think all my friends from outside India, if they are talking about Indian films, they will, oh yes, there will be song, there will be dance. And for people still not familiar with this, I would refer to a quite problematic film, Eternals from MCU. If you remember the portrayal of Kingo from Eternals, which was critiqued for several justified reasons, he's always shown as the star figure. He's always dancing. He's always his acting is not shown much. He's not always shown to act, but he's shown to be dancing and singing. And that's how Bollywood films go. And that's how you get the word masala for talking about Bollywood films. I mean, like it doesn't really mean that Bollywood films are too, crude, but it means that they have a mix of various elements, the masala. And I have also quoted, I think, a very useful observation from Kathleen Erndel. I would now try to focus on the last part of Arndel's observation. That is, masala is a version of rasa. Now, I know that people interested in Indian culture would be familiar with the word rasa as well, but I am not going to assume audience familiarity, and I will still try to unpack rasas a bit. Now, as per the Indian aesthetics, we have 9 rasas. Now, these 9 rasas, combining these, we can develop any interesting, aesthetically appealing narrative. Now, not that always the 9 rasas would be present in each narrative, but ideally, a successful narrative, well, by narrative, I'm trying to cover poetry, drama, fiction, and everything. So I'm sticking to narrative. A narrative would ideally have at least a mix of multiple rasas. Well, you can translate rasa as aesthetic emotion, aesthetic appeal, a kind of emotion that creates a certain appeal to your senses. Now, Erndel, despite being wonderful about the analysis of the avenging goddess trope in Bollywood horror films, missed one very important thing. That is, Erndel says that we do not really have something equivalent to what we call in Anglo-American culture as horror in Indian rasa, but I beg to differ. Now, as you can see, Sam, is my arrow visible when I'm moving the arrow? Yeah. Now, as you can see, this particular expression, the shock, the awe, this is identified as the bhayanaka, which translates to something fearful. So we do have one rasa that represents the fear, the emotion of fear. And when you have a narrative that has the Bhayanak Ras, you have a narrative that is trying to scare, and which I believe, by being a little bit riskily oversimplistic, is what horror is about. So in Indian aesthetic tradition, we do have an element, we do have a traditional emotion recognized as the Bhayanaka, which is very similar to what we have as horror. Now, my friends familiar with multiple interesting discussions on horror comedy should be thinking, why is he leaving out Noel Carroll? Why is he leaving out a lot of more interesting ideas? But well, again, I had to decide. You know, if I try to read, I felt that if I try to read in these Indian films through the hypothesis that have been put forward by Hallenbeck, put forward by Noel Carroll, we might have a lot to unpack. So I decided to zero in on an Indian approach. And I will be trying to develop my own theoretical lens, if we may call it so, by combining Arndel's observation on Bollywood and a very interesting essay, part of a monograph definitely, by Mithuraj Dhusia, who did arguably the singular monograph on Indian horror. Well, there are other two monographs on Hindi horror, but they are, as I said, on Hindi horror. And Mithuraj Dhusia came up with the only existing monograph on Indian horror. So I will be drawing upon Mithuraj Dhusia, I will be drawing upon Arndel. But now let's get back to a bit to Arndel. Now that we are clear about this, that Indian aesthetics, traditional Indian aesthetics, did have the existence of horror as a flavor in its cultural narratives. Now let's get back to Arndel's quote. Well, as she has rightly said, that the masala film, the Bollywood film, it's a mega genre. It has everything. It will not, I mean, even if we are talking about a Bollywood horror film per se, it's not going to just have horror. It will have romance, it will have tragedy, it will have songs, it will have dances, and some of the songs will be actually peppy numbers. They will not be the haunting kind of music that we traditionally associate with horror films in Anglo-American films, I guess. I mean, if I'm not wrong, probably it will be quite challenging to find any English horror film that uses a peppy song and dance number. I don't think we will find that. Probably a horror spoof where we need to look for those, but not in the horror things. So now let's get back to Arndel for a bit. Now Arndel is saying that, well, Bollywood films in general, they are supposed to be a mishmash of different things. But as I said, she missed out an important point by differentiating between Bollywood films in general and Bollywood horror films by saying that the Bollywood films, they have to draw upon something else apart from the Indian traditional aesthetics when they are going to show us the horror, because she believes that amongst the 9 rasas, there is nothing that is equivalent to fear, to horror. But as I said, as I tried to establish, well, it's not so. We do have the Bhayanaka. So until this point, we have 2 things in hand. One, Bollywood relies on stereotypes. Second, Bollywood in general is supposed to give you films that are going to be a mix of different elements. Now think about this. Horror comedy is a mix of different things. So I would try to suggest that Bollywood, its typical pattern, so to say, has the very powerful potential to embrace the format of horror comedy. But has it? Let's see. Well, according to Mithuraj Dhusia, we have had 2 major types of Indian horror comedies. One would be the horrific horror comedies. The second would be the comedic horror comedies. Now, trust me, horrific horror comedies the word horrific is not a comment on the quality of the films, but it's just trying to say that these films are going to have genuinely scary moments. And according to Dhusia, the comedy part relies on the protagonist, who is shown to be a clownish character. And for the comedic horror comedies, according to Dhusia, there is not one protagonist that on whom you are going to focus. Rather, you are going to have a series of characters and some social issue would be there, according to Dhusia. That's how he differentiates between the two major types. But interestingly, now apparently you see, the moment I say there would be social issues, I think our critical minds, oh, that's the stuff for the critics, we are going to say. But well, according to Dhusia, interestingly, these comedic horror comedies, they have stereotypes. In fact, they reinforce stereotypes, gendered stereotypes, more than the horrific horror comedies, according to Dhusia. But now I try to take a step forward by saying that, well, Indian horror comedies do that. I agree with Dhusia, but probably not the Bollywood horror comedies. They are doing something, a bit of a crossover between all these. How so? Well, firstly, as I tried to make myself clear, that a successful Bollywood film, a typical Bollywood film, will always rely on the star actor, on the star actor's charisma, the stardom. I mean, I should add a bit of a note here that, well, the star actors, they do not really play a character in a Bollywood film. They're always playing themselves. I mean, if you pick any film by Salman Khan, he's not really doing any other role, he's just being Salman Khan. So that element is going to be there. So, you know, it's a little bit tricky for the Bollywood horror comedies to do what Dhusia says a horrific horror comedy does. That is, by showing you a humorous protagonist, a clownish protagonist. Because the star is meant to be a star, how can he be a clown? And it's mostly a he, not a she. So, not a clown, definitely. So, how does the Bollywood horror comedy do it? Well, they use star actors. They draw upon the masala style. I mean, all the films that I'm going to talk about, they have elaborate song and dance sequences, PP numbers, what we in India popularly call as item numbers. That is songs that are not at all related to the plot points, but they are mostly, you know, featured as skin shows and some, you know, some lyric that plays to the gallery. So those are a very important parts of these horror films, these horror comedies. And what I will try to establish is that these films, they try to follow a set pattern of formula. That is, you will have scared males and female figures with agency. And this agency that will always come from a supernatural connection. Either I mean, at least apparently from a supernatural connection, because there is one exceptional film which I will talk towards the very beginning, which is not really a supernatural film, but it's a horror comedy. I'll try to tell you how. But well, what I'm trying to say is that this agency part always comes from something paranormal, something supernatural. They are not women with agency because they have they have had some wonderful lessons from institutes and all that. They are drawing power from the supernatural world mostly. And when you add these two together, well, a supernatural female figure can be shown as demonic, as evil, but not in the Bollywood horror comedies, not at least in most of the Bollywood horror comedies. And that is what I try to identify as the turn it has taken. Because previously, in Bollywood horror films, why I'm saying Bollywood horror films, not Bollywood horror comedy films, before the millennial turn. I'll come to that. But what I'm trying to say at this point is that before taking this turn, there were Bollywood horror films that were used to show vilified female figures, either possessed by demons or they are ghosts themselves, and they do evil things. They are not up to any good, and they are identified as evil, as the source of the threat, and they're taken care of at the end. But Bollywood horror comedies, they are doing something else. Here, you do not necessarily have a vilified female specter. Well, the specters, the female specters are there, and they're scaring males, privileged males, males doing evil things, and the spirit is not necessarily an evil one. Well, let's get to the pre-millennial part first. And now I think you will be able to understand why I'm saying that, well, the scenario, the pre-millennial scenario is not very interesting. Horror comedies have a very irregular appearance, have had a very irregular appearance. If you see the sheer time gap between these three films I have mentioned here, well, there could be some lesser known films, of course, in between, but trust me, these are the three major successful horror comedy films that we get before 2000. Well, among these, Chamatkar was a major success, and it did have Shah Rukh Khan, popularly known as SRK, as the lead. But, well, trust me, he was not SRK at that point of time. He was just a struggling actor. So you do not really have Chamatkar escaping the restraints of Dhusia's comedic horror comedies, where you do not have multiple where you have multiple characters, not a fixed protagonist. And what happened with Bollywood horror is that it chiefly grew through the films by the Ramsays. Well, I have heard from my friends in Canada, America, that recently there have been some some shows organized for screening films by Ramsays. I remember one particular interesting event where the film Mahakal was screened in Canada, which is a frame by frame, almost a frame by frame ripoff of Nightmare, of the Nightmare on the Elm Street franchise. So, these Ramsay people, they were quite successful, by the way, but as you can see from the quotes I have given, their formula was not to take risks, but look at the Hollywood scenario to see what is going to work. Whatever worked in Hollywood, they would just bring it to India and try to make a sort of Indianized version of it. But, well, not all the Ramsay films do this. There are things to unpack, but again, that is the talk for another lecture. But, well, one of the major things that the Ramsays borrowed from Hollywood was the portrayal of the women as either vilified women or scared women. Now, I don't think I need to refer to too many critical sources here, because it's almost a given for people interested in Anglo-American horror. And I have come across multiple sources where this is mentioned, that during the 1980s in particular, there was a trend to vilify women in Anglo-American horror. And there are of course the scream queens, whom I refer as the scared women. Now, well, I know that the scream queens are not necessarily the weak women. Rather, it has been later on argued that the scream she utters is actually a manifestation of her strength. But, well, Ramsays didn't know that. They were just scratching the surface. They were picking up the most generic, the most formulaic, and the most successful stuff. And, well, they did pick up the vilified women trope and used it very successfully in a film, Virana. Now, I will be playing a clip from Virana. It's going to be a bit problematic because it has skin show, but I hope I do not offend any of my viewers here. What I'm going to show is just for the purpose of this discussion. And I would request you to please keep Meheli Sen's observation on the film, on the film's protagonist here. Well, I should not be giving you an entire summary because I have more films to talk about. But well, let's keep it very short by saying that there is this lady called Jasmine. You will see how stunningly pretty she is. And she does things on her own. And those things are not good for men. What are those things? How does she do that? Let me try. Sam, I'll be playing the first clip. Okay. What you saw in the clip was quite unconventional for the era where this film was set in. The PPT is back, I guess, Sam. Yeah. We are talking about the late 1980s. And here you have a beautiful woman driving a car by herself, paying for petrol by herself, and eventually she would ask that petrol pump owner to join her for a ride, and they will go to her own place and do stuff. And eventually she would turn out to be a scary monster because she is possessed by an evil monster. So this film was considerably one of the biggest hits of the Ramses. And as you saw, that a woman doing things on her own is dangerous. She's evil. Well, this, I think, was one of the major tropes of Bollywood horror films before the millennium turn. And I should also add that a lot of Bollywood horror films till today still believes to show women like this. Women with agency are source of trouble. But not the Bollywood horror comedies, as I told you. How? Let's try to see. Oh, okay. Yeah. Now, with this, we come to a new beginning. Well, it's quite a jump, but this film, Bhul Bhulaiya, 2007, translated as The Maze, was one of the major game changers for Bollywood in 2007. Practically, a very few people believed that this film would succeed because it was hastily shot. It was remade. It was a remake version of a cycle of films or along similar lines, where you have a family moving into their traditional ancestral palace, and then the wife or the fiancée, she starts to remember her previous birth. You know, previous birth is a thing for Indian culture. I wish I could talk more on that, but not today for sure. And she remembers that she was tortured by a king, a very dominating king, and she tries to take her revenge by remembering her past birth details. Well, this film, Bhul Bhulaiya, plays with these ideas a bit. Firstly, the protagonist, this scary looking lady, wonderfully played by Vidya Balan, she is eventually revealed to be not really undergoing a supernatural possession at all. Rather, she is shown to be suffering from an identity disorder created by the ill treatment she received from her father. And when she came to the palace, she heard about the story of the dominant king. She connected the two male figures and decided to fight against the male figures. Well, what she does, how she fights, I don't think we have time for that. But here you have a woman trying to do things on her own. And I will be playing one brief clip where you will see that the moment her husband tries to stop her from doing something she wants, she flares up. She flares up. Her physical strength suddenly, gets to the super aggressive mode, and she does stuff that normally a woman does not. And you have scared males. Even the hero played by Akshay Kumar. Well, we can also debate on whether he's a traditional hero at all, but well, let's leave that out. But he is scared. This guy looking so funny, he is scared. The husband of the heroine is scared. All the other males are scared. Only the lady here, she is ruling the scenario in this film. I'll try to show you the clip very briefly. Well, she 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 lifted up something quite heavy on her own, and she did that when her husband stopped her from doing what she wanted to do. Well, and towards the end, the major change that we have is that it's not her agency that is at fault, but her father and the torturing king, they are at fault for creating such spirits, such incidents. And now I move to the next slide. Well, did the slide change? Okay, something is amiss. Okay. Yeah. I'm really sorry. I mean, sometimes these things happen.
Right.
Yeah. Switching on the full screen mode. But after the major success of Bhool Bhulaiya, we have a continuation of a similar trend where you have the lady becoming so powerful, and there are scared males in a very problematic film. But and again, I should apologize to my viewers if the images offend anyone, because I find it offensive myself. But I felt that using this image, I could drive in the way the woman here is portrayed as a scary, seductive, supernatural spirit. Well, these three men looking very clownish, they go to a mansion and try to try to do man things, quote unquote man things, to the lone living lady over there. But then it is soon shown that the three men, they were not hunting, they were the hunted. And the lady, she was starved of her desires by her father, and she picks one of the men and asks them to please cooperate, or they will be killed. And the film eventually comes to a problematic end. Even though the spirit of Ragini is shown to be almighty, nothing could stop her, not even an exorcist. Even that exorcist guy is made fun of. All the males are shown to be clowns in the film, but her father's Cain, they evoke her father's spirit, and the supernatural Cain suddenly appears. And more importantly, they hire a male prostitute. Ragini kills him, but the male prostitute's spirit comes to satisfy her. And I find the ending problematic here, because she, despite having all the agency and all the choices, all the power to choose, she is ultimately shown to get satisfied by the man chosen by other men, not the man of her choice. But again, you have the retaining of the scary males here. But again, the supernatural spirit here is not really evil. She is again suffering from the problematic family history helmed by her father. Thankfully, a major relief comes from to 2017 with the film Philauri. This, I think, is probably the most beautiful film of the 7 films I'm going to talk about. You have the lady introduced, the spectral lady introduced as a closet poet. She could never come out as a poet because she was a woman. She knew that if she revealed that it was a woman writing all those beautiful poems, nobody would read them. But then again, she died, she became a spirit, and later on she got married to this cool looking, slightly confused guy here with the headphones.
We can't see the slide. It's not on full screen either, and we're still on the old slide with the 3 comic
I'm really,
guys.
really sorry. Really sorry.
Oh, don't worry. Just want to let you know.
I don't know why is this happening. Well, spooky things. Uh, well. You have the partial view, I guess?
Partial view, yeah, but it's the right slide.
Yeah. Now the full screen view?
No.
This is weird. I mean, the partial view is there, right?
Yeah, that's okay.
I guess we have to make do with that because I can see that we are running out of time quite fast. So this cool looking guy here, he gets accidentally married to this lady because she was living in this tree as a spirit, and the men in his village advise him to get married to a tree, which is a typical thing in India to get rid of his bad luck and ensure that he has a happy married life. These are astrological things. But then you have the spirit of Shashi, played by Anushka Sharma here. She is not shown to be a typical torturer like Ragini. She becomes rather very friendly to Kanan. She helps Kanan to get united with his love, and eventually Kanan also helps Shashi to get reunited with her beloved. And I will show you a beautiful scene, very brief scene here, to explain how the portrayal of Shashi here is almost like an angel. She is not a scary spirit at all. Well, uh, I'll I'll be playing the clip. And now I come back to my presentation again. Yeah, the slide is visible, Sam? In full screen, I guess?
And it's full screen, yeah.
Yeah, the spirits are being kind this time. Okay, but again, I cannot move the slide. Well, I will try to switch to the partial view for the rest of my presentation, I guess. I don't know what suddenly went wrong. Well, yeah. So moving on to the next slide. Yeah, you have Golmaal again here. Golmaal, I think it should be translated as hurly-burly or confusion. Again, this again is a part of a very commercially successful franchisee, where you have this guy in the middle looking very scared, Ajay Devgan, a super action star, playing the role of Gopal. I mean, there had been 4 other films before this particular film, Golmaal again. And in all the four films, Ajay Devgan playing Gopal, well, he was not stealing stones, but he was definitely breaking some major bones. But in this film, he is shown to be a scaredy cat. And his scare of ghosts is explored for most of the film. But then again, it is revealed that someone all these 5 guys knew from at the past when they were all orphans comes back as a ghost, a very friendly ghost, a saddened ghost, and asks for help. And it is very significant that the ghost also gets help by another lady who has psychic abilities. And with with this lady and the 5 friends, the spirit ultimately punishes a wrongdoer enjoying male privileges in the society. So once again, you have the continuation of this pattern where you have scared males. The female spirit is not really a vilified one, but all these, the trend ultimately takes its major form with the next film, Stree. This is my favorite film of the series, and I could see that you people used a scene from Stree for the Eventbrite poster. And I will be playing a clip from Stree. But before that, let me try to clear the premise a bit. You have this fictional town. Well, I mean, it is shown to be fictional, but there is actually a place called Chanderi, which has which is famous for silk garments, producing silk garments. Well, this town annually, it becomes a very dangerous place for men at night for 5 days when you have the festival of worshipping a goddess going on. I wish I could unpack all these, but I have one publication coming from Taylor and Francis. Interested people would be advised to contact me. I would be more than happy to share with you the details about the connection between the goddess and the specter and the unnamed witch here. But well, let's just try to sum up the matter by saying that the spirit who haunts these men, she is not really being an evil spirit. Rather, she was trying to find love, the love that was denied to her by the men of the town, because when she was alive, she was a prostitute, and they killed her beloved, and she committed suicide. And then she started haunting the town in order to avenge, in order to find the love that was denied to her. And now I will play the clip and show you how the protagonist of the film takes the help of the unnamed witch. And when she repeatedly instructs the hero to look at the spirit with love, when he actually manages to look at the spirit with love, the spirit changes. The spirit undergoes a very significant change. So I will be playing the next clip, Sam. And if they have, I would advise all of you to watch this beautiful film. This, well, I'm probably being a little biased, but I think in the next 10 years, this will be identified as a game changer in Bollywood horror. But well, after this, the spirit eventually becomes a protector. Oh, yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I will return to the clip, to the presentation quickly. Well. Now, and I should also add that there is a sequel in progress of Stree, which will explore the myth further. So, in this film, you know, the men of Chanderi, they are always kidnapped where doing bad things that men in India do. Sorry for this reference, but in India, peeing in public is a typical man thing. And it's very interesting to note that one of the men get whenever they are peeing in public, the kidnapping of the men, this has a very interesting connection with them peeing in public, them going out at night in search of prostitutes and all that. So Stree is not being a typical bad spirit. She is rather catching men, Indian men, doing bad things, doing things that they do out of their privilege. And as I said earlier, the ending changes it all. The spirit is not really, you know, exercise of the town. Rather, they turn her into a protective guardian of the town. I wish I could show those scenes, but time is again running short. I come to the next film. Well, now you see, Stree was an exceptional film, no doubt. And with Ruhi, I guess the formalization, the tendency to make a formula of this formula, that is, you have a group of men doing bad things, and you have a female specter punishing them, scaring them, driving them away, teaching what is right. This emerges as a formula in Ruhi. And Ruhi was actually an attempt by the same production studio that made Stree, which was a surprise hit, and that they are still trying to develop a sort of shared universe following MCU, you know. And Ruhi was the second attempt, but well, Ruhi was not successful. But from a critical point of view, I find the film very interesting, because now you have another fictional Indian town shown, Bagadpur, where you have a very problematic trend of men kidnapping women whenever they feel like marrying that woman. I mean, these men, they cannot simply go and ask for her hand from her parents, but they have to be a man and kidnap her. That's what the film shows. That's what happens in this town. And there is a very professional gang doing these kidnappings. They get money from people who cannot do the kidnapping themselves. They kidnap the would-be bride, hand over the bride to the guy's family. That's all. They do it very professionally. But these professional kidnappers one day kidnap the wrong lady. They kidnap a pretty girl who is already possessed by a specter called Muria Peri, translated as a spirit with feet turned backwards. Now, this is a fact drawn from Indian folklores, where you have the lore of the churel with the feet turned backwards. But let me add that the churel is not shown as is from the folkloric stories. It has been transformed into a very interesting character here. I wish I could unpack it more, but well, let's sum it up like this, that the kidnapped woman, well, she was possessed by Muria Peri, but towards the end, she decides to not let the specter be driven out of her body, because she realizes that by joining hands with the specter, she and the Muria Peri can teach men a lesson. So it almost kind of becomes her alternative identity in a sort of Moon Knight kind of way. Whenever she will be in trouble, Muria Peri will take over and teach the bad guys a lesson, and they will have fun together. So this film, despite being unsuccessful, continues the trend established by Stree, although with limitations, I should add. Now I come to the last film that I discussed today, that is Bhool Bhulaiya 2. Now, as you can find it from the title itself, it is a continuation of the first film, Bhool Bhulaiya 2007. And well, the reason I am talking about this film and leaving out 4 other films, which I will mention towards the end, is that the success of Bhool Bhulaiya 2 establishes the fact that this trend is catching up. Because, Bhool Bhulaiya 2 came at a time when the Indian film industry, the commercial film industry, was undergoing a major crisis. Almost all the big films, all the big budget films, all the films with big superstars were, tasting failure, major failure at the box office. But Bhool Bhulaiya 2 became a huge, huge earner, despite having a very limited budget and a not so popular star as the hero. But here again, you will see that the evil spirit of Manju, played by Tabbu, a very formidable actress of Indian film industry, she did not become evil because she was evil. Again, patriarchal norms. Well, Manju is shown to have a twin sister, and together they represent the angel in the house and the mad woman in the attic kind of binary. And since her childhood, Manju was not given the love her angel in the house sister Anju was given. So, Anju, who fitted the ideal Indian docile woman, made Manju turn against her. It was not that she was jealous of her sister per se, but she was reacting about the lack of love from her own family because she was not the angel of the house. And towards the end, it is revealed that Manju is punished, but with an acknowledgement that it was her family which was responsible for the evil things that she did. And another major interesting thing happened here is that you will see a brief clip I will play, where you will see the male lead of the film doing a very elaborate dance like a woman, which is very unusual for a Bollywood hero to do. And mind you, this sequence was not intended to mock the hero. Rather, this was the climax of the film. So I will now play the last clip, and I have come towards the end of my presentation, so bear with me a bit more. I know I have overstepped the time already. So I will now play the last clip for the day. A haunting song. People interested in the song should check it out. But you know, the way the film utilizes the hero, the female spirit, the antagonist in the horror, within the frame of horror comedy in this film, well, I see that the trend of using scared males, a female spirit that is taking revenge, it now has a continuation outside the Stree universe, outside the films by Maddock Films. So other franchises are likely to embrace this trend further. And well, if you have a particular trend, albeit in variety, appearing not in 1, 2, 3, but 7 films, I think that's a trend. That's an interesting trend. And I end the presentation by mentioning these 4 films that I had to leave out. All these are very interesting and horror comedies. And you have either the Scared Males of Go Goa Gone. It's a very interesting film and a film that has been widely written about because it is arguably the second best zombie film by India. And you have Lakshmi, where the superstar Akshay Kumar is playing as you can see in the poster. Well, I'm not going to use the slur used traditionally in India for referring to such person because I find it offensive, but he gets possessed by the spirit of a trans person and he appears as a trans person to avenge, to let the trans person spirit avenge. And and you have Phone Booth, where you have the spirit played by Katrina Kaif leading the scenario, leading the narrative, while the 2 men shown in the poster, they do stupid things, but they ultimately do the right thing at the end. And you have a very interesting film, Veria, which is a continuation of the Stree universe, where you have a werewolf film. But trust me, this is not a typical male-centered werewolf film. I should not give you many more spoilers. If you are interested about the film, you will find that the transformation into werewolf of the protagonist is very significantly related to a female werewolf in the film. So again, you have this trend continuing, and speaking personally, I would want to see this trend continuing further. So this should do the formality part of references. And this is 3 saying thank you to all of you on my behalf.